As a- Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Cora Manuel. I am the Director of Financial Aid at Mills College at Northeastern University. I have been in financial aid for a very, very long time, since 2000, and I have seen a lot of changes as well as the increases in tuition. So hopefully this evening, we'll be able to go through everything you need to know, or almost everything you need to know about financial aid in about 30 to 40 minutes, and be able to take questions at the end. So let's get started. Tonight, we're going to go over what financial aid is, a lot of acronyms, cost of attendance, expected family contribution, a lot of various terms that come out of the financial aid offices, financial need, the different types of financial aid, applications, any special circumstances, and various resources that are available to the families and the students. So again, what is financial aid? Every single one of the parents can write a check for $70,000 a year, right? No, I don't think so. So a lot of the financial aid, again, is there to assist the students and the families to address any of the charges, tuition, room and board, to help pay for post-secondary expenses at the colleges and universities. So our first acronym for the evening is cost of attendance, COA. Every single campus, school, university will have a different cost of attendance. The tuition and fees are different. Housing, is the student going to be living on campus, living at home, in the future renting an apartment, also an estimate for food. We have estimates for books and supplies. Estimates of transportation. We're not talking about buying the new Tesla. We're talking about possibly BART or County Connection or any of the public transportations, and sometimes a little bit possibly gas or insurance, and then miscellaneous and personal items. Another estimate of maybe students want to go off campus because they're tired of cafeteria food, or you need that new sweatshirt from the bookstore. So again, we are able to include some of these. These are all estimates that, again, every campus, college, school, university will have a different amount. Our next big acronym is the EFC, the expected family contribution. This is the results of the information that the families put on the financial aid applications. It is a photograph, a picture of basically the day in the life of a family that will show the schools and universities, in theory, what the family can contribute to the students' educational expenses at the various schools. So again, it looks at the family's ability to pay. It has a portion for the parent to contribute, and as well as a student to contribute if the student has been working or maybe considering working. So again, that's part of this formula that first the federal government looks at, and sometimes the state of California looks at, and then maybe the schools will have their own application. So every school, campus, school, university will take their cost of attendance. They will subtract the EFC, the expected family contribution, and will come up with a financial need number. This financial need is the number that the schools, colleges, universities, financial aid office will try to fill with scholarships and grants and other need-based financial aid. And we'll talk about need-based and non-need-based aid. Need-based aid, again, is based on the various applications, the federal application, the state application, sometimes a school application. Non-need-based aid is most of the time considered merit-based aid, or if there is not any financial need, then again, there might be some other types of financial aid that meet that number or not meet that number, but most of the time it's merit where it can either be athletic based or academic based. So there's various kinds of financial aid that's out there. Several types of financial aid can be broken down into self-help or gift aid. So gift aid is the free money. That's the good stuff that doesn't have to be paid back. That's the scholarships and grants that can, again, be both need-based or non-need-based. And then there's the self-help aid. 4-letter words: loan or work. So again, loans will be available on the financial aid offers to most students. Again, loans are there to help. Students are not required to accept the loans if necessary, if it's not required. Work study can also vary from school to school and how it's being offered by each campus. So where does all of these funds come from? Again, federal government. The largest amounts of aid come from the federal tax dollars, states, the colleges and universities itself, other outside private sources, and employers, either employers of the parents, or sometimes if the student is working, there could be some scholarships available there as well. Here's a list of the various federal student aid programs. Again, these are all tax dollars hard at work. Again, the federal Pell Grant, federal work study, student loans, and the federal parent loan, the PLUS loans, the federal supplemental educational opportunity grant, which is a mouthful, so that's why most administrators call it the FSEOG. So that's also campus-based, and it could be offered based, again, on the results of either the FAFSA, the federal application, or a state application. So states, for example, California, we have the Cal Grant. Students that are, and parents, the residents of state of California, require the federal application, and it is based on both merit and need. So merit, again, the schools will be submitting the GPA, grade point averages, for the students on behalf of the student to the California Student Aid Commission. And once they receive either the federal or state application, they will match it with the GPA. And if the applications, for example, the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application is submitted now and the GPA is matched, California Student Aid Commission will be sending out information soon, typically in November, regarding any eligibility for the various grants. The deadline to submit is March 2nd, but please do not wait till March 2nd. Do it sooner rather than later. And it would be it will help both the California Student Aid Commission as well as the various schools and universities to be able to package or include any Cal Grants in any financial aid offers. This is the California Student Aid Commission website. Students will be required to log in or create their profile in order to accept the award, and also let the California Student Aid Commission know which school the student will be attending. Again, the different schools, colleges, and universities will also be looking at those federal applications or state applications in order to offer their merit and financial need-based scholarships or grants. Again, you should be checking the various colleges and university websites, the financial aid office websites, to see if there are earlier deadlines than the March 2nd deadline. A lot of schools are asking that it be submitted possibly in December. Some schools require it in January. So again, so that you are eligible for the most amount of financial aid possible, please submit your applications sooner rather than later. Some schools, not a lot, but there are a few hundred around the country that require a separate application in addition to the federal application, and it's called the CSS profile. This is not a free application. And again, looking at the school's website to see if they require the CSS profile. Just a handful of schools in California require it. University of Southern California, Stanford requires the CSS profile. So again, mostly private institutions will be requiring the CSS profile in addition to the other applications. So please definitely check the school that you're looking at, their website, to verify if this is required. We also talked about outside private sources. Again, different foundations, organizations will have various opportunities for scholarships and grants, different deadlines, different applications. Again, looking early rather than later for any of the scholarships that are available. And students should also continue their search throughout their college career and not just during their senior year in high school. There are a lot of scholarships out there that are one-time only, but there are also quite a few scholarships there that are renewable for the full 4 years that a student will be attending a four-year school, university. So again, looking for those scholarships is helpful. It may be need-based, it may be merit-based, or it may be just submitting an application. I know there's also some out there that are raffle type scholarships. My one huge suggestion is to have a separate email account for scholarship applications so that it doesn't necessarily go all into your personal primary email, but then you have a certain place for all of them to go and you can check in one place. Employers, again, some companies, organizations do have the opportunity to offer scholarships and grants for the dependents of parents. Again, for example, at one of my old institutions, St. Mary's College of California, if the parent works there for 1 year, it's free tuition for their students, up to 5 children, as long as they've been admitted to the college. So you can check there as well too. So the very first application that needs to be completed is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Again, it's going to collect the name and address, all the demographic information of the student, financial information. Again, the U.S. Department of Education Federal Student Aid will then take all of that information and use the formula to determine the expected family contribution. Again, this is in theory what the federal formula says a family can contribute to the student's educational expenses. And the FAFSA is again available in English and Spanish. And again, the colleges use that number to offer their need-based financial aid. It opened on October 1st, and I tried to do it every year on September 30th because we're allowed to do that in California. But at 10:05 p.m. that Friday night, the website crashed. So we're learning now that, again, October 1st is usually the opening date, but you can wait till the 2nd or 3rd so they can work the bugs out. Okay, so again, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, needs to be completed sooner rather than later. And as I mentioned before, different colleges, schools, and universities may have different priority dates to complete the FAFSA. Several ways to complete this application. Number one way is to do it on the web, FAFSA on the web. Don't recommend doing it by paper. Doing it on the website, it takes about 3 days to actually process, versus doing it by paper during the peak season. It can take 6 to 8 weeks. So we highly suggest doing it on the website. Doing it on the phone can take a little bit longer too. depending on, again, when the federal student aid has office hours, quote unquote. Again, they are on the East Coast, but they do allow for West Coast hours. Again, also too, depending on the availability of the financial aid administrator, they can also help to either complete the initial FAFSA or to make any corrections. So FAA Access, Federal Aid Administrator, can also assist with the FAFSA. Again, doing it on the web, it has a lot of built-in edits to prevent a lot of mistakes. It also has skip logic. So if the family answers a question a certain way, you may be able to skip 10 to 15 questions. So that makes it a little bit easier to complete the FAFSA. There's also the option to authorize the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, to transfer the information from the appropriate tax form to the FAFSA itself. So it makes it easier. That way you don't have to hunt and search for copies of your tax returns or looking at the little numbers, which line you have to match up. So again, that is a wonderful option to use and make it a little bit more easier to complete the FAFSA. Again, it makes it easier to submit, to process. There are a lot of help bubbles on the application online. If you're not sure what it's asking or what from what line on the FAFSA, on the IRS 1040, it will tell you exactly what line, what to add. Again, you can check on the status online if it's been completed, if the schools in theory are able to receive it, and it makes it much easier when you have to do this for the next 3 years. The student will be in a 4-year program. Okay. The student and parent will need an FSA ID to complete the FAFSA. This is basically the electronic signature, one for the student, one for the parent. Again, these FSA IDs will follow you for the rest of your lives. If parents have other older students that you've already completed a FAFSA for, it will be the same FSA ID, because again, these are tied to the Social Security numbers of the parents completing the FAFSA along with the student. And then also the student will have their own FSA ID that will follow them during their college career. Again, we talk about the Irs Data Retrieval tool and how helpful it is to transfer the information. It's voluntary. You do not have to authorize the IRS. You are absolutely have the option to enter the information yourself. Although using the Irs Data Retrieval tool will reduce any additional requests from the various financial aid offices if they need to see additional information. The FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, again requires the student information to provide a Social Security number, citizenship status, marital status, the highest education level completed by father or mother. This question is typically for the California Student Aid Commission, for students that are returning to college, not necessarily students that are just graduating from high school, but it is on the federal application as well as a state application. I know I get a lot of questions from families. My student's going to be 18, they're going to be independent, right? No, unfortunately, the federal government says that parents will be required to provide information on the applications until the student is either 24 or has already graduated with their bachelor's degree and are now attempting a master's or graduate program, or the student is married, has kids. We're not going to go into that, or veteran of the armed forces. So again, there are some other special situations which we will discuss at the very end, but again, students will require their application to be completed and signed by a parent. Again, parents will also provide information on the FAFSA income, the income tax liability, other financial information as well. For example, assets, checking savings account, is one of the parents considered a dislocated worker, that they were not working during the specific year of the FAFSA application. Also ask for different means to benefits. So there are a lot of questions on the FAFSA to be asked, but again, if you answer a certain way, skip logic can come into play and you not have to answer all 120 something questions that are on the FAFSA. Again, the student will provide similar information if they were working, tax liability, if they received any federal benefits, again, ask for assets and various untaxed income. Also on the FAFSA, it will ask, who do you want to receive this information? Which schools? So the first initial FAFSA to be completed, you have the opportunity to submit to 10 schools at one time. It also asks for housing plans. Does the student intend to live on campus, require a meal plan, or is the student going to be living at home, commuting? Again, this will help to determine the cost of attendance, which we talked about earlier in this presentation. If families decide to pay someone to complete the free application, that person is required to sign also on the FAFSA, as the federal government is tracking that information because the first F in FAFSA is free. Again, signatures are required. The student has to sign. One parent of the dependent student will sign the FAFSA using the Fsa Id. If not able to do that, then a signature page will then need to be physically printed and signed and mailed in. Or again, if you are looking at the 10-page paper FAFSA, then that also needs to have basically a wet signature and then mailed to the appropriate address. Here's a few FAFSA errors that have happened over the years. Our parents want to make sure the FAFSA is done for the students and may pretend to go into the FAFSA and complete it on behalf of the students. And instead of putting the student's social security number, they put their own social security number. So again, if you're working on the student's application, please make sure the student is there, that they also see what is required on these applications. Unless mom or dad, you're also going back to school, then you will do your own FAFSA with your own social security number. We have different situations where there may be divorced or widowed or remarried parent information that is required. Again, the definitions are on the FAFSA application on the website with the little help bubbles. But at the very end of this presentation, I will be giving you my email contacts. So feel free to reach out if you have questions regarding anything on the FAFSA or from what other schools may be offering or asking from you. Untaxed income, there's a whole different list of various types of untaxed income that need to be reported on the FAFSA. When the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application asks for income taxes paid, this is typically not the amount that you may be writing the check for. It is the full tax liability that is determined on the IRS Tax 1040. A lot of the asset and investment errors that come up, you do not need to report the value of your primary home. You also will not be adding onto the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application any retirement accounts, any IRAs, KIOs, 401s, 403s. Again, those are not reported on the FAFSA. If there are any 529s, that is considered an asset. If there are investment properties that will be needed to reported the value, the net worth reported onto the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. Household size, again, that could be a big question. If the older students are not still considered dependents, but they're living not under the household, they're on campus, they are still considered part of the household. If grandparents or other relatives are living in the house, if they are being supported by the family more than 50%, then they will be counted as household members. But if they are not being supported more than 50%, then they are not considered household members. Number of household members in college. Again, if this is the first student going to college, but either mom or dad, maybe also going back to college and doing a FAFSA, the student FAFSA will be 1 in college. But if mom is doing her own or their own FAFSA, then it's the parent and the younger student will be 2 in college. And I know that is as clear as mud as possible. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So we did the FAFSA. And it was sent to CPS, the Central Processing Systems. You hit submit, 3 days, it's processed, doing it FAFSA on the web. The student that has provided a valid email will receive the results. And in theory, the schools, colleges, and universities will be able to draw down the information from the U.S. Federal Department of Education, Federal Student Aid, Central Processing System. But please, please, please be patient with us because our databases may not have received the updates yet and may not be able to draw down the information, but we will be able to log into the federal website to view and see that it has been completed. Again, if a valid email has been provided on the FAFSA, students are then will receive an email of the student aid report, the SAR. If no valid email is provided, then it will be a paper student aid report will be mailed to the address. And then again, as I mentioned, the colleges, schools, and universities will be also able to see the information, and they get an ISR, which is basically the same as a SAR, but it's institutional. Okay. Again, you can make corrections to the FAFSA. Doing it on the web, FAFSA on the web is much easier than doing it by paper. Again, it does require the student to sign it with the Fsa Id. Can do it by paper again, mailing that in. I don't recommend that because again, it can take weeks to reprocess. And then also asking the colleges or universities to submit the corrections on behalf of the student and the family. When you take a look at the free application for federal student aid or the California Dream Act application, it asks specific questions and it does not have any space for any special circumstances. When you look at either application, the free application for federal student aid or the California Dream Act application, it will ask for information from your tax returns from 2 years prior. 2 years ago, income may be different than what it is happening currently, but you must answer the questions on either the FAFSA or the Dream Act applications according to what it is asking. Should there be any special circumstances, changes in income, you need to send that directly to the colleges, universities, schools, financial aid office. Okay. You can also look on their website to see if there is a specific form to be submitted, or sending an email directly to the financial aid office saying, here's what's happening with our family financial situation currently. They will then respond with various either applications or requesting additional information, various tax forms, W-2s. Again, each school, college, university, and campus will look at these special circumstances differently. and then it cannot, again, appeal to the U.S. Department of Education or the state of California, because the school will make their final determination in order to offer their various financial aid, scholarships, and grants. These are a few of the special circumstances that some schools can take into consideration. Again, if there were extraordinary medical or dental expenses that were not covered by insurance, some schools can take that into consideration. Again, if there was a change in income from 2 years prior to currently, they can take a look at that as well. If, for example, families are supporting other family members in different countries. So, for example, if I were helping some family members in the Philippines, sending additional financial resources, that is nowhere near on the FAFSA, so I would have to provide that information and possibly receipts to the various schools' financial aid offices. So this is a very short list, again, of different resources that schools, students, families can take a look at. Studentaid.gov is the federal website where you would complete the FAFSA. California Student Aid Commission, ca.gov, that has all the information regarding the state grants, the various state grants that are being offered. Again, your high school counselors have a wealth of information, and again, making appointments with all the different colleges and universities that will be visiting campuses. When you go and visit campuses, feel free to drop in on the financial aid office, make friends, bring cookies and roses. I'm just kidding, but make friends and grab business cards or their contact information, so that when your student decides to complete their 4 years there is someone you can go directly to speak to. Fastweb.com, that's the largest database for outside scholarships. As I mentioned before, having a separate email for scholarships and applications is helpful. Logging into fastweb.com, the student would create a profile based on their hobbies, sports, academics, and then they will start receiving all kinds of financial aid applications for you to then sift through to say, does this application apply to my situation? And then you can feel free to submit that application. And again, checking the deadlines, if it's an early deadline, if it's a rolling deadline, also checking to see if they are renewable. Again, looking on fastweb.com, that's where I saw that they have raffle scholarships. So again, taking a look at that. And scholarships.com, again, is one of those other databases to look for outside scholarships and grants. Another helpful hint, besides having a separate email account, is please be aware that unfortunately there are folks out there that are scamming families and students that say, hey, go ahead and give me your name, social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name, again, and I will give you financial aid. Typically, no, that's going to be someone that is phishing for some identity theft. Also, there are folks out there that do charge to help find scholarships. But again, there might be folks out there that say, hey, give me $500 and I'm sure I'm going to get you $500 back in scholarships. So again, both the FAFSA, first F stands for free application for federal student aid. The other application for students and families that cannot complete the federal application is the California DREAM Act application that is also free. Other than the CSS profile, again, not all of the private schools require that. That is not a free application. But again, reviewing the various financial aid offices websites to see if it is required to complete both the FAFSA and the DREAM Act, or the DREAM Act application and the CSS profile. There may be also other applications, but again, looking at the different websites, it will let the families and student know if there are any additional requirements. And as promised, this is my direct email. Please feel free to send me emails. This presentation, it has also been sent to the counselors there, and then will be provided on the website, I believe. So I will leave this up for a few seconds while Ms. Abogado has possibly some questions.
I do. Thank you so much, Cora. Okay, so I did have some questions that I'd like to have answered live. They're not as straightforward as some of the ones that we did answer in the Q&A box. And so I'll just go ahead right into them. One of the questions, Cal Grants are offered starting in November. Does that mean FAFSA needs to be completed before November?
They were saying that if students had completed the FAFSA on the 1st, if the website didn't go down, that typically, or the first week, the California Student Aid Commission would start sending out notifications of eligibility for Cal Grant, as long as there is at least one California school listed on the first initial FAFSA or California Dream Act application. The deadline to complete the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application to be eligible for the Cal Grant is March 2nd. But as I mentioned before, a lot of schools, universities may have earlier deadlines. For example, St. Mary's College of California used to have a February 15th deadline to complete the applications. I'm not sure California State University Sonoma used to also require the FAFSA Dream Act application at the end of January. So again, looking at the schools that your students are interested in, please look at their websites to view when the applications are due. But as long as the initial FAFSA or Dream Act application is completed prior to March 2nd, students would be eligible to be matched for their GPA in order to see their eligibility for a Cal Grant. I always say do the application sooner rather than later. Other states, they don't necessarily have a deadline. They just say do it soon because we may run out of money. So it doesn't happen in California yet, crossing my fingers, but please, sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple questions that are similarly related. Is it true that if you have more than 50K in savings, you'll most likely won't qualify for a FAFSA? Is it worth making large purchases before applying?
The most popular answer any financial aid counselor, advisor, administrator will give to questions like that regarding income assets is it depends. Depends on how many are going to college. It depends on, again, the types of awards that are being offered. Depends on the cost of attendance. Depends on the EFC. The federal formula and the state of California, the formula to determine an expected family contribution, again, looks at various things. How many are in the family? What is the income? What is the savings? It is a snapshot of a day in the life, financial life of a family. So yes, I suggest paying your monthly bills first before submitting that to the on the FAFSA or the Dream Act application. Again, there may be special circumstances of why the amount in a savings account may be large. It could have been from an insurance reimbursement, again, possibly from the various environmental situations that have been happening in the state of California recently. So that can be taken into consideration. So again, also skip logic. It will say, did does the family have this much in savings or checking? If it's a certain amount, you may not have to report it. So it depends.
Thank you. We have a question regarding if FAFSA considers that 529 plans with custodians that are not immediate family, grandparents, as assets.
529s that are in the name of other relatives will not be reported as assets on the initial FAFSA. It will then be reported as untaxed income in future years once the student has been given some of those funding. So again, not the first year, but once it's been accessed to help assist the students, then it will be reported on the future FAFSA or California DREAM Act applications.
Okay, thanks. I am a stay-at-home parent. Can I create the FSA ID account, or does my working spouse need to create that?
Either parent can create an FSA ID. Both parents can do the FSA ID. Again, the FSA ID can also be used to sign any federal loan documents. The student, if they decide to take the federal student loan, they will use the FSA ID to sign the loan documents. If a parent decides to do a federal Parent Plus loan, either one of the parents can take the loan out in to assist the student. So it could be in either name. So, but you know, the federal student ID will be attached to the parent's social security number.
All right, thank you. Let's see, where's my next one? Okay, so there's a question regarding the filing and opting out of the FAFSA graduation requirement for California. Can you expand on that a little bit? The requirement to fill out the FAFSA starting this year.
Actually, I cannot answer that question. That is on probably on the website, csac.ca.gov, to review that, to opt out of completing the FAFSA. So again, that is a requirement of the state of California, requiring the schools to submit the GPA on behalf of the student, as well as completing the FAFSA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that is a very new law
Mm-hmm.
that I have not been able to read through all the legalese from the state of California.
I do have a little bit more information as well, at least for our district. So yes, it is an assembly bill that requires that. And our district is, I believe, still creating the opt-out form. So that should be out to our senior families shortly. But yes, there is a requirement now for us to have all of our seniors fill out the FAFSA. And if you choose to opt out, there will be a form that will have out to families as soon as we have it available. Next question. For a 12th grader applying for FAFSA, which year of income taxes are needed? It had mentioned 2 years. Is this the junior and senior year? Please clarify.
The federal application and the state of California, they will be looking at the federal income tax return from 2 years prior. So the FAFSA and the DREAM Act application that is currently being submitted will be for the 2023-2024 academic year. So for students that are attending or starting colleges, universities next fall. So for the 2023-2024 FAFSA or DREAM Act application, it will be looking at the 2021 IRS tax return.
Thank you.
Trying to remember since I did my FAFSA while driving back from Reno on my phone. And I did believe it was 2021 that I transferred the information to.
They do have an app for the FAFSA. So there is a question, who is eligible for Csac? Can all apply? So I think this is more regarding FAFSA and California DREAM Act applications.
So the California DREAM Act application is for students that are attending schools in California that are typically underdocumented or undocumented and do not have a social security number to complete the federal application. So the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, requires that the student be a US citizen or a permanent resident alien and have a social security number. If students are not, again, have a social security number or are underdocumented, undocumented, then they will be able to complete the DREAM Act application in order to be eligible for financial aid at California schools only.
Okay. I want to confirm that for the household part, we don't include family members who do not live more than 50% of the year. If so, should we fill out his/her tax paid if he or she still supports our income? I'm a little confused by that question.
So the household members that will be included are, again, for example, if the parents are supporting the grandparents of the student more than 50%, then they are included in the number of household members. If a student, if there's an older sibling that is attending college away out of state, as long as they are still completing the FAFSA and parents are signing the FAFSA or DREAM Act application, that student is still considered a member of the household. If there are relatives that are just staying at the home, but again, parents are not providing more than 50% of support, providing rent and food and other things, then they will not be included in the number in household.
Okay, thank you. So given potential for scams and etc., is it advisable or problematic to put a credit freeze on 3 credit rating agencies? I've never been asked that before.
And I like getting new answers or questions. Stump the trainer, absolutely. Only if you feel that your credit is being threatened, that you have provided, again, that I hope you haven't provided any of your personal identifying information to families, or to other unscrupulous scholarship organizations. I'm just warning that there may be some, not all, again, having a separate email for scholarships and grants, to, again, look and read every single application to make sure they're legitimate, not asking any intrusive questions about the family's information. Again, if you don't trust that scholarship, please feel free to delete that application. I get a lot of scholarship emails from various organizations that say, hey, add my scholarship to your list on your school's website because we're offering all of this money. And I review it, or my staff reviews it, and okay, they might be handing out $100, but what are they doing? They're collecting email addresses so that they now have a list to blast out various ads for their services. Okay, so again, having a separate email for scholarship applications can then also block a lot of those unwanted emails and filling up the primary email of the student and family.
Perfect, thank you. Is your primary residence considered as an asset for the purpose of FAFSA?
The value, the net worth of the primary residence will not appear on the FAFSA. It will appear on the CSS profile should your student be required to complete that application in addition to the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. When you look at either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, there's a total of 100 something questions. Again, Skip Logic may be able to have you skip those questions. If the student has to and the family have to complete the CSS profile, there's about 400 questions on there that does ask for the value of the primary home, the mortgage. It also asks about any credit card debt that is owed. Those questions do not appear on either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application.
Perfect, thank you. And we did have a couple questions similar to this one. What annual income total should not bother applying? And then, general estimates. If I may, financial situations can change, and they have changed, and things like the pandemic have happened and severely impact families. So while you might not need it at the beginning of their college freshman year, it may be possible at certain points during their freshman year, they may need financial aid. And so it's still advisable to fill out the FAFSA, and also it would be necessary for them to receive merit aid as well.
So every school will be different, of course. Again, Angelina Jolie can complete the FAFSA on behalf of her children to be eligible to receive and use a federal Parent Plus loan to help any one of those students attend college in the future or currently. So again, there may be a certain income ceiling to be eligible for the Cal grant, but again, it's not just looking at the adjusted gross income of the 1040, but it also looks at other income, untaxed income to either add or subtract from that number. And as Ms. Abogado says, that it can change in the spring and second semester or second quarter of the student's freshman year. I did have that situation happen a few years ago where the student was not eligible for the Cal grant at the start of their freshman year, but there were some financial circumstances that I was able to submit to the federal government and the state of California in March of their first year, their freshman year. And I was able to get that student the Cal grant retroactive to the first term of the academic year. So again, if you are an Angelina Jolie completing the FAFSA for the first year, it's no harm, no foul. It just, again, gives the family an idea of what a school can offer the students. And then you may not need to complete the FAFSA ever again. There are some scholarships that do not require the FAFSA. For example, any merit scholarships that are just looking at GPA, or if it was a competitive scholarship or grant. Athletic grants, again, those can vary from school to school, Division I, Division II, Division III, and the various types of sports being offered at that school, campus, college, university. So again, it depends.
Thank you. Let's see here. Do you recommend to create a separate email for the FAFSA?
You could do that as well. Parents, feel free to put your email on the first FAFSA instead of the students, so that you will receive the information that it was completed and processed. Again, if you do not see the results of the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act in 3 business days from the time you hit submit, then may want to look in the junk or spam folders. Sometimes it could go there. Again, anything that says .gov or csac.ca.gov, again, those will be the legitimate sources of the student aid reports coming from either the federal government or the state of California.
Thank you. We are down to the last couple minutes. Does the California school listed on your FAFSA have to be a UC or CSU in order to be eligible for the Cal Grant, or will any California school qualify?
Any California school will qualify. If your students are looking at multiple campuses of either the UC or the CSU system, those schools, campuses have to be listed separately on the FAFSA for those individual campuses financial aid office to receive the information in order to award their various types of financial aid.
And for students that have been visiting all of the college visits at school, every single college presenter is telling the kids, please fill out your FAFSA. And we have a lot of schools that are private schools from California who've also shared that with our students. And just to props, more kids need to be visiting these college visits to hear that firsthand as well.
Thank you so much. So we will be sharing this presentation on the website as soon as I'm able to get it onto the website. So hopefully by this week. Miss Manuel is, her email is on the website here. And as soon as we have the recording available, we'll send out additional materials, including her contact information. I'm sorry we didn't get to every single question that went through the Q&A, but please email Cora, email myself, or Miss Nichols. Our contact information is on the Cal website. And thank you all for joining us tonight and getting more information regarding financial aid.
Thank you.
Thank you all.